welcome, friends. As the first speaker said, that one attains to the Supreme when he understands that all is resolved or comprehended in the One. So even though there are three things here, we're going to start off with the One life, because we are all part of the One life. Nature is one complete whole, and whether we look at it from the atomic structure, where it is mirrored in the macrocosm, or we look all about us, we can definitely say that everything comes from the same source. In this physical realm, we can say that the sun is the giver of all life. So the hidden side of that would be the inner realm, the spiritual energy behind the sun gives us all life. Occult science, Madame Blavatsky says, recognizes that there's no such thing in nature as inorganic substance or bodies. Stones, minerals, rocks, even chemical atoms are simply organic units in, she says, profound lethargy. Their coma has an end and their inertia becomes activity. So we recognize one universal, all-pervading life. And modern science sees life as like a special phenomenon of matter, a transient manifestation that's temporary. And therefore, they see some objects, some parts of the world as alive and some parts as dead. Whereas occultism sees it all as living, organic or inorganic, all composed of lives. Furthermore, occultism recognizes that nothing ever is lost or disappears. Everything's constantly transforming. So even the rock that we see will eventually be transformed into something else on the physical plane and also on a higher plane. The monad, the life that is in that form, will continue on to other forms for the purposes of gaining experience. So occult philosophy teaches us that the monad is essentially and potentially the same in the lowest vegetable organism up through all the forms and gradations of animal life to man and beyond. And we ask, what could be beyond man? It could be the perfected men, those beings that comprise the laws of nature, the hierarchies of being, and that there's a gradual unfolding of potentiality from the monera up to man and even beyond, from planes of consciousness that become gradually more self-conscious and then become universally conscious. Every monad, even if it's enclosed in a form like a rock or a vegetable, is limited by matter, but it's conscious on its own plane and in its own degree. So consciousness belongs to plants, to animals, and as we get to man, there's self-consciousness, and the higher triad of principles in man that we are attempting to explore is the Atma Buddhi Manas, to make it active in us and not just dormant or latent, but to become fully developed. And then we become conscious on a higher plane, on the 6th or 7th plane, Madame Blavatsky says, and we become as gods. But to bring it back down to the microcosm, consciousness is a condition of the monad as a result of embodiment in matter and the dwelling in a physical form. Self-consciousness is looking upward. It's the beginning of perfection. And selfishness is the curse of separateness that we experience once mind is lit up and man, we can make our own choices. We see ourselves as separate, but it's just a stage on a grand evolution. So that man, that being, is a complex structure of various lives, innumerable, not only microscopically, the cell, the tissues, but the molecules, the atoms, but they're all permeated with the essence of the one life. Every so-called organic cell is known to have its nucleus, a center of finer or more sensitive matter. The nutritive, all the formative and functional processes consist of flux and reflux, of inspiration and expiration to and from the nucleus. So the nucleus in its own degree and after its kind is like a monad imprisoned in a form. It has a consciousness and intelligence of its own, and man thus consists of these innumerable lives. So in thinking of the one life, we have to view ourselves as housing intelligences that we can participate in the one life with. It's when these lives, we feel separated from them, that there's this dis-ease resulting in disease, injury, ill health, etc. Those beings who are like Jesus and Buddha, those who are perfected, maybe those aren't examples, but they are. It's possible for them to live much longer than we do because they participate with all the lives that make up the form, and they don't commit that sin of separateness. They understand that they are the guiding influence of those lives within the mortal body that they're choosing to be encased in, to be on this plane. Occultism also teaches that the ego precedes the physical body and survives the physical body. So we were conscious before being in a body, and we will be conscious after. The ego is always conscious on some plane. Whether we're asleep, we're not conscious through the body, we're in the dream state, it is still thinks and it's active on some plane. And whatever plane of matter a being can be on, there is a corresponding state of matter and consciousness that correlate. And more is given in the intro to the Secret Doctrine about that. So if we go from the macrocosm to the microcosm, we could say that this journey begins with ideation, and that leads to manifestation. Which leads to, hopefully, and it does in all cases really, retention of transcendence. What does that mean? It means as we learn, as we experience things, we retain the essence of that experience and give a forward impulse to all the lives along with us, all the matter, all the material that we come in contact with. So there's this continual involvement, and we can look at it from the inductive to the deductive and back up again through experience, and transcending that experience results in a higher level of manifestation, a corresponding higher plane of ideation. As an analogy, suppose a bright light is placed in the center of a room with a curtain around it. The nature of the light that penetrates through the curtain becomes visible to a person standing outside, depending upon the nature of the curtain. If several such curtains are thus successively placed around the light, it'll have to penetrate through all of them. And a person standing outside will only perceive as much light as is not intercepted by the curtain. The central light becomes dimmer and dimmer as curtain after curtain is added, and as each curtain is removed, the light becomes brighter and brighter until it reaches its natural brilliancy. Similarly, universal mind, or cosmic ideation, becomes more and more limited and modified by the various upadhis, or bases of action, of which a human being is composed. And when the action or influence of these various vehicles, upadhis, is successively controlled, the mind of the individual human being is placed en rapport eventually with the universal mind, and his ideation is lost in the cosmic ideation. So as we progress and we learn and experience and we integrate that experience into our being, we're gradually perhaps removing layers to that essential one life that we all are. This brings up the idea that we're all experiencing the one life together. In order for us to recognize even another being, we have to have some level of transference of atoms, of consciousness, or else there would be no connection whatsoever. So this brings up the idea of thought transference, that as atoms and vibration from thought, from sound, is exchanged, constantly exchanged between a being and all other beings, those thinking along the same lines or those in proximity are going to be able to recognize or absorb them. So thought transference, science thinks of as sort of a trick or impossibility, but it's actually what's going on all the time, because every thought is a physical phenomenon. It's in a subtler form of matter, and we could describe it as an alteration in the nervous fluid. And there's an intimate connection between the nerve fluid and the aura surrounding it. So occultism says that this nerve fluid has its own aura, like every congregation of molecules in nature. And as we move higher and higher, and it becomes more subtle and rarefied, we reach the plane of the akasha, which is the storehouse of thoughts, where all is recorded, and it's the imperishable sort of record of everything that was. And that's how the next cycle can be based on the experience and the development in this cycle, because nothing is lost. No record, no thought, no action, nothing is ever lost. It's always transformed. So all beings have an aura and a corresponding sort of nerve fluid that we aren't able to see with our physical eyes. It's not part of part of the vibratory spectrum that we can see with our physical eyes. Nonetheless, it is there. And for every thought, it affects the nerve currents in the brain, and a vibration which is caught up, and it communicates within the astral fluid with whoever is in contact with that. So it affects the aura around the thinker's brain, and it's transmitted to the brain to which the thought is transferred. It's converted into a particular kind of motion, and that's how it's communicated to another person.